My name is Adam Midgley. I'm a songwriter, producer. I'm signed to Universal. I got involved in the camp today through an old friend who's Jimmy. He works at Bucks. He's an A&R that I've kind of been aware of for years. He started out by scouting at Parlophone, and he was like, I always remember he was like the first, like when the MySpace like explosion kind of thing happened. He was like, if you had a decent act, like any kind of decent act, it was like decent in any way, Jimmy would send you like a one-line email on MySpace just saying, can you send me some demos? Jimmy Smith. And like everyone I knew had been hit up by Jimmy Smith, and it was like, who is this guy? Like, who is he? What does he want? But I don't think he ever like followed up with many of those artists, so it was just a lot of like false hope going around at that time. But yeah, he's just a top guy, man. So yeah, I've been in touch with him for ages, and he brought me down today. Today, I think the brief for the camp was for Misha B. So I think as an artist, she can go in kind of quite different directions. I've done a track with her outside of the camp already, so the track I've done with her was quite up-tempo, so I kind of had the idea to come in today and try and write more of like a ballad for her album. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do today. I think there's been about 5 songs written for her today, so hopefully she likes one. So yeah, I've done a few, but not as many as I would have liked to have, because I'm a programming, I'm a track producer, so I kind of, for me, it's easier to get the best out of me if I'm in my own environment, like with my own guitars, my own synthesizers, my own computer, my own drum sounds. It's easier for me to be creative in that environment, because it's like you kind of build up a palette of sounds and like your go-to software and stuff like this. So to write on the move and just to kind of like come down to a studio and just write for us is harder than it is for like a top liner who just comes down and just sings, or you know, if someone's used to just writing with a piano all day type thing. So it can normally be like a bit different for me, but I've done a few where I've just had a wicked time. Quite often I'll bring my whole like computer. I'll get like a cab to bring it all down, and I'll just set up like a little mobile studio for a week or something. But most of all, I like just meeting people, like, and just talking, like, and just like, it's not, you don't get a lot of opportunities to just to kind of like, you know, to play each other music and kind of bump into all your peers, all the like, weirdly you feel like rivals when you're at home in your studio. You're like, oh, what are they doing? Oh, did they get that single? Or they got that cut? Or so it's really nice to see everyone and be like, hey, I really like that record that you did, or I heard that demo you did and it was wicked. Or you'll bump into producers that may have worked on some of your songs. And like, this kind of made an impact in my mind years ago when I first signed my first publishing deal was with a guy called Mark Scher, who's like one of the best publishers around. He signed me and he sent me to like a songwriting seminar, and it was with a country writer from Nashville. And like as an example of what I mean, how like different the UK is, and how I felt like it's like, as writers we're all quite segregated and kind of like in quite a fierce kind of competition without kind of like reaching out to each other and kind of like, you know, helping out. So he was telling me that there's this feeling of like community in Nashville, which is kind of like at the heart of what makes it such a special place for songwriters. And he was saying like, you know, they have nights where the songwriters go and play each other their songs, like not the artist singing the songs, like even if the writer can't sing, they'll go on stage in a bar and do a version of the song just to get it across. And the writers will all sit there and listen and like give each other feedback. And the other thing that he was talking about is just that like proximity of writers, it like breeds a higher standard of work. So he's like, we're all in the same town, we're all like pushing each other on, but we're sharing and kind of giving each other advice, and like you're trying to top each other, but it's like a friendly, like positive competition that leads to a higher standard of work. And I feel like, especially in the last 10 years, but now I feel like it's starting to change, that we've never really had that in London, in the UK. Like, I've just moved into a studio complex that's got about like 30 rooms. It's like a whole brand new complex. And when I first signed to Universal 3 years ago, for example, I went to Sweden, and those kind of complexes were everywhere. And I remember thinking, there's literally not one of these in London. There's nothing like that, where all the best like creative songwriters are in the same place and they're sharing ideas and bumping into each other. It's all very much like every man for himself in a little corner of London somewhere, kind of in competition. Whereas feels like there's more of a writing community now in London, and like a more kind of optimistic and like a better kind of outlook and a better kind of spirit about it. Maybe I'm just like imagining it. Maybe I'm being optimistic, but that's how it feels to me. And like stuff like this here today, I think this is the second or third camp Jimmy and the Bucks team and Pierre and people are doing these kind of camps. I think it's really, really positive, and like everyone's kind of getting on really well, and it's wicked, man. I love it. I'd do it all the time if I could, but this is probably my third one. That's a bad question for me because I was late today basically, so we've got to ask someone else that question. But I basically, I mean, anything with the songwriting kind of experience is very it can be very sensitive like that. Like that's the funniest thing. Like a lot of me and my like songwriter friends, we always like joke like the first time you write with someone, it's like going on a date or something like that, and like you're scared to like kick things off. Who's gonna do that? Who's gonna, you know? It's like having your first kiss with someone. It's like you're like, who's gonna make the move? Who's gonna? And quite often, like one of my favorite ways to do it is to have ideas prepared beforehand, because you can just skip a lot of like awkwardness. Even if like you bring something into the session that just gets the ball rolling. Like 20 minutes or half an hour, maybe 2 hours into it, you might actually scrap that idea and do something else, but it would have just like been an icebreaker. So I came today with loads of ideas on my computer, and I kind of had an idea in mind of what kind of song I wanted to try and create for Misha. But in this exact example today, I actually arrived like 20 minutes, half an hour late, and some of the guys had already kind of got some chords together, so it was more a case of kind of taking a back seat and being like, that's cool, I like that, or why don't you try this, or, you know what I mean, trying to, kind of taking a backseat, but trying to get involved as much as possible. Yeah, do you know what? I need to hear it. I need to hear it now because I've been outside while they've been vocaling it, because everyone's like, we've got no vocal booths or anything here today, which is why we're doing this interview in the hall, because there's every room you walk into, somebody is just singing. So and everyone else in that room's got to be silent. So for now I haven't heard it, but I've just been outside. But yeah, it sounds good. Everyone here today is like super talented. There's like some of my favorite writers around. So it should be some good stuff, I think. I suppose that's one of the other things that I like about doing these kind of camps. For me, it's a totally different experience. Whereas like in my studio, I'm kind of writing 3 to 5 days a week with artists, and then I have a lot of work to do every day after someone leaves. Like almost every single day I create something which has created like 2 days work for me as a producer, like to go through, edit vocals, put it all together and produce it. But the nice thing for someone like me who does that a lot is to come to a camp like this, is to come in and contribute something to a record without it being my responsibility to finish it. So in this case, today we were really lucky to have a guy called Louis White, who's worked with Ed Sheeran and Devlin and stuff. He's down in Studio One, so he's handling that responsibility. So I would imagine that Louis is gonna like go home after this week with like a lot of files and a lot of work to do. And I wouldn't be surprised if it takes him a couple of weeks, and then he'll deliver the songs to Jimmy and team at Pierre, and they'll distribute them back to the writers, they'll email them back to us, and they'll pitch them in, and then we'll just sit like that reading our emails, just waiting for good news. That's pretty much what it's like as a songwriter. You just like the thing that I've kind of created in my mind of how to be a successful songwriter is to I just kind of have this rule, which is, it kind of like, sometimes it's almost heartbreaking, but I just don't, when I finish a record, I don't listen to it again. Like ever. Like from the day that it's finished to me, I can't listen to it again, because I'll listen to it again when it's on the radio, if it's on the radio, like when and if, because otherwise you just get hung up on stuff. Like you'll work on stuff too long, you'll keep, every time you hear it, you'll hear something that could have been different, and it's just 1,000 possibilities racing around your mind. And if you've already sent it to the A&R or you sent it to the artist, it's too late for you to change it. So if they come back and say, can you revisit it, we wanted to do this, that, then sure. But in the meantime, I'm just on to the next song. In the UK, it's been a record called "How We Roll" by Louis Gessian, which went to number 2 last year. Yeah, that's as a songwriter, that's my biggest hit.